श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनकारुणं परमानन्दं माधवम्। So I don't see a lot of attendance today, and maybe it's because we're starting after a while. So maybe we can give a few minutes for the other devotees to join and catch up. Did you do anything? Were there any presentations or any discussions that happened during this break?
Yeah, that was the plan, Prabhu. But I myself was traveling like close to 2 months or 3 months. I was there in India. So I couldn't arrange and we couldn't do it. I'm sending a reminder as well.
Okay. Okay.
But one thing I can tell you, we have missed you. It was like a how do you call this? Like, you know, we are so used to that Monday and Wednesday. And, you know, anyway, it was a break. It's good, but too much break is not good. which what we felt.
I can completely relate to what you're saying, that in a way it was a break, especially because it was the holiday season and there was other stuff going on. But also every Monday, Wednesday, I would feel like something is missing. So missing the association of the devotees and the Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, even our children were saying, you don't have a class? We said, yeah. So every time say, why? You don't have a class? Yeah, because every time we say, oh, we have a class. You don't have a class? Weird, so long you don't have a class? Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it's about so we so I'm open to suggestion. I can start, and the devotees can hear the recording, or if there aren't anybody's joining, then Prem Kishore Prabhu, maybe you want to take a poll and see if there is,
I think they will join, Prabhu. They may be a little bit late, so they will join.
Yeah, maybe just continue, and then, you know, they can, you know, watch the video.
Sounds good. Okay, so we were doing the prayers by the activities of Prachetas in the 4th canto, chapter 30. And we have done 9 verses, so pretty much we were in the early part of the chapter. The first part of the chapter was, so quick recap, the Prachetas, the son of Maharaj Prachinavari, that they are asked by the father to go and perform austerities to have suitable sons because they're Prajapatis. While they are entering the lake, Lord Shiva appears, and then he glorifies the good qualities of the Prachetas, that they are submissive to the elders, they're firm in their vow, they have control on the senses, and because of that, he gives them the praise to Lord Vishnu, known as the Rudra Gita, which the Prachetas for 10,000 years under the in the water, they recite it with full faith and full concentration. At the end of the 10,000 years, Lord Vishnu personally comes in there and gives them the darshan. So the initial part of the chapter is Vidur asking that what did the Prachetas achieve by attaining Rudra Gita, by chanting Rudra Gita, and what did they obtain in this material world? Significant question. These are two questions asked by Vidur. And then we see that after the Lord is satisfied by the austerities and the prayers, he appears, and the Lord appears in the Ashtapuja form, in the 8-armed form, wearing yellow garments, kastuba. He is described as wearing a dazzling helmet. And since the Lord is never alone, he's always accompanied by devotees. So he comes on the back of Garuda, surrounded by sages. And then the Lord begins to speak, right? So the first quality that the Lord glorifies is your friendly relationships. Very interesting that we had spoken to some extent about this, that of all the qualities that Prachetas had, and they were definitely a storehouse of good qualities, the Lord glorifies first the qualities of the friendly relationships with each other. And then he gives this benediction also that those who remember you will also develop friendly relationship. Right? So this is one of the auspicious results of reading this pastime, meditating on the friendly relationships of the Prachetas. Now the Lord begins to glorify the Rudra Gita. So that's where we have stopped at verse 10. So we will resume our discussion from Canto 4, chapter 30, verse 10. Ye tu mam Rudra Gitena Sayam Prat Samahitaha Stuvantyaham Kamvaran Dase Pragyam Chashobhanam. Those who will offer me the prayers composed by Lord Shiva, both in the morning and in the evening, will be given benediction by me. In this way, they can both fulfill their desires and attain good intelligence. So we see that the Lord at first acknowledged and glorified the friendly relationships of the Prachetas with each other. Now he glorifies the process that they follow. So what was the process? The chanting of the Rudra Gita as given by Lord Shiva in the morning and the evening. Now they were chanting continuously, but this is a benediction to others, that by chanting in the morning, Pratah and Shayam, in the morning and the evening. So we also see that the Lord is glorifying the parampara. And he first glorified the students, the Prachetas, then he glorifies the process, and then he glorifies so the process was given to them by Lord Shiva, which is the chanting of the Rudra Gita. And then he glorifies the fact that they heard from an authorized source and followed the process without any mental speculation or changing it because of their own conceptions. So this is essentially what parampara is: receiving the knowledge in the unbroken disciplic succession and following it as one has received it. So Prabhupada says that this is the way of the parampara system. If we follow the acharyas, we attain the same benefit as our predecessors. If one follows the decisions of Arjuna, he should be considered to be nicely hearing Bhagavad Gita from the personality of Godhead. There is no difference between hearing Bhagavad Gita directly from the Supreme Lord and following a personality from like Arjun, who formerly heard Bhagavad Gita directly from the Lord. So Prabhupada makes an important point that the glory of the parampara also is that they may take complex and difficult to understand instructions and manifest it in the behavior. So we may not understand the instructions per se, but we can always emulate the behavior. And as long as the person is situated in the parampara, it is as good as us also receiving the instructions, understanding them, and then acting on them. So Arjun, he heard the Gita from Krishna, he understood it, and then he acted upon it. Maybe we cannot understand the Gita completely. Maybe we cannot figure out how to completely reconcile all the instructions by Krishna. But we can see the behavior of Arjun, or we can see the behavior of other devotees, like Srila Prabhupada and other gurus and acharyas, and then we can act like them. Like Prabhupada, he was always anxious to preach, very, very compassionate towards other devotees, always willing to share Krishna consciousness, to share prasadam. So by his own achar, he demonstrated the prachar of the parampara, right? And made it easy for us. So Prabhupada further says that sometimes foolish people argue that since Krishna is not present at the moment, one cannot take direct instructions from him. Such foolish persons do not know that there is no difference between directly hearing Bhagavad Gita and reading it, as long as one accepts Bhagavad Gita as it is spoken by the Lord. Okay, so moving on to the next verse, verse 11. Yadyuyam pituradesham agrahista mudanvitaha athova ushati kirti lokanano bhavishyati. Because you have with pleasure accepted within your heart the orders of your father and have executed those orders very faithfully, your attractive qualities will be celebrated all over the world. So further glorification of the prachetas by the Lord. It gives two reasons why they are glorious. One is for their friendly relationships with each other. Second is for sincerely following the instructions of Lord Shiva. Right? These two qualities have been already glorified. Now two further qualities are being glorified in this verse by the Lord for accepting, so agrahishta, the orders of the Father with pleasure, mudanvita. Right? So it's said that a disciple is first class if he anticipates the instructions of the spiritual master. And a disciple who grudgingly performs the instructions of the spiritual master is considered to be a low class, a third class disciple. And of course, there are those who simply neglect the instructions. So when the prachetas were ordered by the father to perform austerities, they happily accepted the instructions, mudanvit, right? So with pleasure they followed, and Lord Vishnu is appreciating them. And the second is that not only did they accept the instruction, they executed them faithfully. So simply accepting is good, but not good enough. The fact that they didn't have any angst that the father had given this instruction, that is good. But better is that they executed upon them. So, if you remember, this is very close to the description of bhakti that appears in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, right? So, by Pumsha Parodharmo, Yato Bhakti Raso Adhok Sajay, Ahitukiya Pratihata, Yayatma Suprasiddhyati, right? That is, bhakti, pure devotional service is causeless, unbroken, and executed with self-satisfaction. So causeless means that there are no pressures. Right? Causeless does not mean that it just spontaneously appears. There is always a cause. Somebody preaching, somebody inspiring you. But causeless really means that there is nobody that is forcing you to execute it. Right? Ahituki. And self-satisfaction means that it is executed with pleasure. Right? And unbroken means that it is executed faithfully. So we see that these qualities that manifest in pure devotional service are also being glorified in the prachetas, which is not surprising, because the only way that they could have received the audience of the Lord is by pure devotional service. So Prabhupada, in the purport, he notes that this voluntary acceptance is a symptom of the free will of the jiva. Even though the free will is minute, but nevertheless, when it is properly exercised with love and faith in the service of the Lord, it becomes the key to devotional advancements. It's the distinguishing factor. The Prabhupada says that because of this minute independence, the living entity can obey or disobey the orders of the Supreme Lord. Right? So even though the independence is minute, but it still can put the jiva on one side or the other side of Maya. They can either obey or disobey. When they obey, then the result is happiness. When they disobey, then it is unhappiness. And the Lord does not interfere with this minute free will. So the fact that the prachetas exercise the free will to happily execute the instructions of their gurus. So the father is one of the guru and Lord Shiva is the other guru, has put them on the good side of the Lord. The Prabhupada said that is why the Supreme Lord is praising the prachetas, because they faithfully obeyed the orders of their father. The Lord therefore blessed the sons of King Prachina Bharishad because they obeyed the father's orders. Okay, verse 12. Bhavita Veshruta Putro Navamo Brahmano Gunai Ya Etam Atma Virena Trilokim Puryasyati. You will have a nice son who will be in no way inferior to Lord Brahma. Consequently, he will be very famous all over the universe. And the sons and grandsons generated by him will fill the three worlds. So far, we have seen the Lord's appreciation of the prachetas. Now we see that he is glorifying the future son of prachetas. Because when the prachetas were ordered by their father, it was for the purpose of having a suitable progeny. So if you remember, Maharaj Prachinavari he was not particularly devotional. He was very strong in Karm Kand, and then we went through the whole Nag Muni preaching to him, etc. But at the time that he gave the instructions to his 10 sons, he was completely engrossed in Karm Kand. So he wanted, because they were in the lineage of Prajapatis, he wanted the Prachetas to perform austerity. That was the process at the time, that you purify yourself by performing austerities, so you can have a suitable son who can have further progeny. And when Lord Shiva gave instructions to the Prachetas, it was for devotional service. So this pastime will demonstrate when the Lord gives benedictions, he covers everything. The material desires, the spiritual desires, what is best for them. So here is covering the material aspect of that was the initial cause of the austerity. We see the same thing in Dhruv Maharaj. That Dhruv Maharaj, he wanted a kingdom, and the Lord fulfills that and also gives him bhakti. But there is a difference between Dhruv Maharaj and Prachetas. Dhruv Maharaj's bhakti is considered in the mode of passion, because he wanted revenge, and his incentive was to somehow avenge his insult at the hand of his Maharaj Uttanapad and Suruchi. The Prachetas, they had no such desires. In fact, the bhakti of Prachetas is considered to be Shuddha Bhakti, because it was not materially contaminated. So while they had received these instructions from their father, but they were initially executing it to please their father, and when they actually began the process of austerity, then they were purified by listening to the Rudra Gita. So they executed it only for the purpose of the pleasure of the Lord. But the Lord is still taking care of their desires, right? We see that also in the case of Kardama Muni. Right? Kardama Muni, he performs austerities for 10,000 years. And there he says, I'm performing austerities to get a good wife and a suitable son. But the Lord is so pleased by a single-minded focus on the Lord that he gives that, and then he also gives him the passage back to Godhead. Right? So when one approaches Krishna, then Krishna takes care of everything. There's no need to approach anyone else. So here the Lord is glorifying the future son of the Prachetas. So later on we'll see that all the 10 Prachetas will have one son. They will marry the one woman, Marisha, and they will have one son who actually will be a reincarnation of Daksha. So if you remember the 4th canto, it began with the pastime of Daksha, who was arrogant and who had insulted Lord Shiva. And then Lord Shiva had sent Veerbhadra. Veerbhadra had cut off the head of Daksha. And then Daksha got a goat head. And then the goat-headed Daksha became very repentant and begged the forgiveness of Lord Shiva. And so he was purified. And then he completed the yajna. And then after that, at least in me, there's a little lack of clarity, because there's slightly different understandings. One is that in that very goat head, he performed austerities. So the first Daksha appeared in Swayambhavu Manu's reign, which was the first Manu, and right now it is the reign of the 6th Manu, Chakshusha Manu. So for 6 mantras, he has been performing austerities. Very long time, right? Now, whether he's performing it with the head of a goat, or whether he's performing it in some form, at least to me, it's not clear. but he will now appear again. And we also see the lingering effect of Vaishnava Pran, that he offended Lord Shiva and his daughter also, Sati. And after that, he went through so much of purification. He was punished, he begged forgiveness, performed austerities for such a long time. But we see that he's still contaminated by the offense. So first time he had appeared as a Brahman, actually as the son of Brahma. This time he appears as a Kshatriya. And so there is a fall in his status. And we see that this time also he offends Narad Muni because he still has that mentality. The nature of Vaishnava Aparadha is that it creates this offensive mentality in the person. Just like when one does sin, then one becomes conditioned to doing more sin. But the Lord is very benevolently saying that he's at the level of Lord Brahma, right? Because he's also acknowledging the genuine repentance that Daksha has experienced. So we see that Daksha will reappear in the 6th canto. Actually, the 6th canto, 4th chapter, we will see he reappears chanting the Hamsa Guha prayers to glorify the Lord. Prabhupada writes in the purport that it is suggested that the son's name will be Vishruta and that he will glorify both his father and mother because of his good character. In fact, he will be greater than Lord Brahma. The great politician Chanakya said, if there is a good tree within a garden or forest, its flowers will fill the forest with their fragrance. Similarly, a good son within a family makes the whole family famous all over the world. Krishna took birth in the family of the Yadus, and consequently the Yadu dynasty is famous all over the world. The Prabhupada is recognizing, just like we see Krishna recognizing, that even though they were offensive on his part, but his genuine repentance and austerities for purifications has attracted the mercy of the Lord. So in a way, it is encouraging also that doing, even if one commits an offense against a Vaishnava, then by genuine repentance, by begging forgiveness from the Vaishnava, by performing corrective actions, one can be reinstated. And caution also that how pervasive the offense can be, how difficult it is to reverse it. Okay, next verse, 30. Kandaha pramulochaya labda kanya kamallochana tam cha pavedham jagru bhura nripanandanaha. O son of King Prachina Barishat, the heavenly society girl named Pramlocha kept the lotus-eyed daughter of Kandu in the care of the forest trees. Then she went back to the heavenly planet. This daughter was born by the coupling of the Apsara named Pramlocha with the sage Kandu. So this is a familiar pastime that sage Kandu was performing very severe austerities, and Indra was getting worried. So he wanted to spoil the austerities. So he sends his Apsara named Pramlocha. And then she succeeds in seducing him, and they have conjugal union, and the daughter is born. So after the daughter is born, both Sage Kandu and Pramlocha, they refuse to claim the daughter. The Pramlocha says, I'm an Apsara, and I have no business living here in this world. And anyways, Apsaras, we don't particularly care about children. Prabhupada sometimes calls them society girls, sometimes he calls them heavenly prostitutes, different names, but essentially they are more pleasure seeking. And Sage Kandu, he was repentant, he wanted to resume his austerities, he didn't want to enter into Grihastha life. So they both left the child in the jungle. They said that whatever this child's fate is, let it be. And they left. So when she started crying, then the trees of the forest, they took pity on her and they started taking care of her as their own daughter. And the presiding deity of the trees is moon god, Soma. So because she was hungry and crying, then Soma, he placed his finger in the mouth of the girl. And since the devas have drunk the nectar that was extracted from the churning of the ocean, his finger also had the nectar. So because of this, she became nourished and became beautiful. The Srila Prabhupada will also explain that how envy is the nature of the material world. Explains in the context of Indra and Sage Kandu, that Indra is an exalted personality, not free from envy. Okay, verse 14. Shukshamaya mukhe raja somapiyushavarshinem Deshinim rodamanaya nidadesa dayanvitaha. Thereafter the child, who was left to the care of the trees, began to cry in hunger. At that time, the king of the forest, namely the king of the moon planet, out of compassion, placed his finger, which poured forth nectar within the child's mouth. Thus the child was raised by the mercy of the king of the moon. The Prabhupada writes that although the Apsara left her child to the care of the trees really could not take care of the child properly. Therefore, the trees handed over the child over to the king of the moon. Thus, Chandra, king of the moon, put his finger within the mouth of the child to satisfy her hunger. Verse 15. Praja visarga adhishta pitrama manuvartata tatra kamyam vararoham tamudvartamachiram. Since all of you are very much obedient to my orders, I ask you to immediately marry that girl who is so well qualified with beauty and good qualities. According to the order of your father, create progeny through her. So Prabhupada says that the Prachetas were not only great devotees of the personality of Godhead, they were very obedient to the orders of their father. Therefore, the Lord asked them to marry the daughter of Pramlocha. So we see here that the Lord, he once again glorifies the obedience of the Prachetas to their father. So the 10 Prachetas, after 10,000 years of austerities, receive one wife, with whom they will have one son. Right? So clearly this was not for the purpose of conjugal enjoyment. It was simply for the execution of the duty that was given to them by their father. Now, the son they will have is going to be very potent. So Daksha, we will see later on, he will have 10,000 sons. And then he will have another 1,000 sons. And then he will have another 60 girls who will marry various sages. So we'll study this in the 6th canto. So whether you have one son or whether you have 10,000 sons, as long as they're not produced through lust, but for the purpose of satisfying the orders of the Guru and Krishna, they're not different from devotional service, right? So the Prachetas, they fully satisfied the orders of their father simply by having, all 10 of them by having one son, and Daksha fully satisfied also by having tens of thousands of offsprings, right? We also see the difference between the Prachetas and their son Daksha. Both did austerities. The Prachetas did for 10,000 years, and Daksha, he did it for 3 mantras, which is essentially millions and millions of years. Both of them get audience of the Lord, right? After the Hamsa Guhya prayers, the Lord appears before Dakshas. And so the Prachetas, they chanted the Rudra Gita, and Daksha chanted the Hamsa Guhya prayers. They both received benedictions from the Lord, but with different effects. So the Prachetas received only enough benediction to satisfy their commitment. Right? One wife, one son. And essentially, as soon as that was done, they took to pure devotional service. Daksha, on the other hand, had many progenies, and he was constantly thrown into material strife, right? Quarreling with Narad Muni, planning, marrying off the, convincing the sons, marrying the daughters, right? So a different follower. So the Lord responds to the desires of the supplicant. So the only purpose of Prachetas in praying to the Lord was pure devotional service. But they also wanted to follow the instructions of the Father. So the Lord satisfied the desires to follow the instructions of the Father in such a way that it minimally impacted the real desires for pure devotional service. It did not become an obstacle to it. Now, Daksha, on the other hand, he wanted to become a famous Prajapati, and the Lord reciprocated, right? So between the two, you see Daksha, much more powerful personality. Considering his antecedent, he was born directly from Brahma, right? And then he had Lord Shiva as his son-in-law. He had Sati as his daughter. And then we see his capability of performing austerities. Like compared to 3 mantras, 10,000 years is nothing. And both of them approached the Lord. But Daksha had desire for material greatness. And the Prachetas, their desire for devotional service. And the Lord reciprocated accordingly. Okay, we'll do one more verse and then we'll stop to see if there's any discussion. Apratak dharma shilana sarvesham vahasumadhyama apratak dharma shileyam bhuyat patnya arpitashaya. You brothers are all of the same nature, being my devotees and obedient sons of your father. Similarly, that girl is also of the same type and is dedicated to all of you. Thus, both the girl and you, the sons of Prachina Bharisha, are on the same platform, being united on a common principle. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this. That when the Lord is saying that all 10 if you marry one girl, then the Prachetas may object to it. So the Lord says that even though you are many, you are one in quality and conduct. And this is my blessing, thus all faults that are visible or invisible will be mitigated. So by the conventional codes of religion, the marriage of one woman to many men is not generally congruent, right? We know in the Mahabharata, Draupadi marries the 5 Pandavas. But typically, the opposite happens. That it's the men who marry multiple women. So, in order to assure the Prachetas that there is no fault in this, the Lord is explaining the principle over here. That you're all 10 individuals, but you're also one. And how are they one? That the two things that are defining the Prachetas is also unifying. That they are all obedient to their father, and they are all devotees of the Supreme Personality of God. Right? So he's saying that don't consider this to be an aberration. Then he also talks about, the Lord says, why will this marriage be a successful marriage? So a successful marriage is based on, amongst other things, the compatibility between the man and the woman. Right? So we see that the phrase aprathak dharma shilana, similar in nature, it appears twice in this verse. Once for the Prachetas and once for the wife, Marisha. So the 10 Prachetas are similar in nature to one another, and the Prachetas are similar in nature to Marisha. So just like the Prachetas are obedient to their father, the Lord is saying Marisha will have the quality of obedience to the Prachetas. So the second aspect of their objection, that maybe the woman might not like marrying 10 husbands, even though you told us we're okay, but the woman might not like it. And then the Lord is saying, don't worry about it. Just like you have this quality of obedience, she is of the same quality. Just like you are pleased to follow instructions, she is also pleased. And because of this quality of obedience, she will be able to satisfy all of you. So she will not create any strife amongst you. So the Prachetas are basically being glorified by the unity. And they may have concerns that sharing a wife may create strife amongst them. If the wife shows preference to one with respect to the other, or the wife criticizes one and glorifies the other, then it will create strife. And the Lord is assuring them that will also not happen, because you are united by a common principle of obedience. So Prabhupada says that aprathak dharma means occupational duty without difference of purpose. It is taught in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is divided into 3 divisions: karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. Right. Prabhupada says that they are different paths, but they are united by aprathak dharma. Because essentially they are all there to ultimately attain the Lord. Maybe some are more direct and some are less, but they are not contrary to one another. They all lead one to ultimately surrender to the Supreme Lord. Okay, so let me pause over here and see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Very nice to see you back. So wonderful to have
Haribol
this.
Prabhu, missed
Hare
you
Krishna.
too.
Yes. Just a couple of things. One is this Rudra Gita was given to the Prachetas before they went into the water for performing austerities, right?
Yes.
So the marriage already happened before they went into the water?
No, the sequence is that they were getting ready to enter into the lake, and then Lord Shiva comes and gives them the Rudra Gita. Then they enter the lake, and for 10,000 years they recite the Rudra Gita. At the end of 10,000 years, the Lord appears, and now this is the conversation that is happening between the Lord and the Prachetas.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So he is prophesizing. He will say that you will get this wife. Right?
Okay, that's clear. Another thing is about the behavior and preaching. You are talking about how we can easily relate to the teachings of Bhagavad Gita or scripture or the principles when we see the example in real life, the achar of a person. So then it makes easier for us to understand the principle. Otherwise, it's very difficult to comprehend or difficult to assimilate. So that's very powerful, and it also has a counterproductive in one sense. I shouldn't say counterproductive, but I don't know what's the right word. But when we see the congregation of devotees not in a good standing, meaning they have a lot of fighting amongst them, politics amongst them, and all these kind of qualities. Those who are taking up the process in the beginning, when they find these things, when they are in the middle of these things, it puts them off, and they don't want to proceed further. They don't want to proceed further in chanting the holy name in a consistent way, or taking the next step of taking initiation. All those things that they see the initiated devotees are not performing well in their life, in their conduct, and so they lose faith in that. So that is what I was trying to say is, on the one hand, we have how the principles help us to grow up. If we see somebody who are following the principle, but at the same time, if you don't see anybody, it just puts us off completely out. And so in such cases, what should we do when we come across people like that who are put off by these kind of situations? I don't know whether this is the right forum to discuss this, but I'm just asking because I come across these things, and it's kind of disheartening to see these things.
It's a relevant question, Prabhu. Thank you for asking. So you're right. The conduct of the devotees is very powerful, and both in terms of inspiring or in terms of having the opposite effect. And that's why we have all these instructions. Radhanath Maharaj says, right, that you should interact with every devotee. I think it's Bhakti Maharaj who said you should interact with every devotee, understanding that your entire spiritual life depends on that interaction. And Prabhupada, I think, said that devotees should always act every moment thinking that I am at this point representing my spiritual master. And somewhere else it is said the devotee should always act as if Krishna is watching them, if Krishna is present and watching them. So same theme that because everybody is one way or the other taking inspiration from devotees, good conduct will make them favorable and help them advance in Krishna consciousness. And the opposite will basically, as you were saying, it will bewilder them, it will cause them to think about devotional service negatively. It's difficult for us to control the activities of others, but we can become representatives of Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. And so when those around us, when they're getting bewildered by the activities of certain devotees, then they also gravitate towards those who are not showing those actions. I remember in our temple, this is many years ago, I was responsible for the maintaining the mailing list of the temple. So our congregation, even though at one time maybe 200 to 250 people come on Sunday feast, but all said and done, our congregation, the numbers in our congregation was close to 3,000. And we would, collect the emails from Janmashtami and festivals and all that. And I would send them updates, etc. And then somebody also started, they got that mailing list. I'm not sure how they got it. I must have made a mistake somewhere. But then they started sending different kind of emails out. That are you aware that the temple president is doing this? Are you aware that your funds are being misused? Are you aware that the standards are being diluted? So even though this was more, there was no it was more like impersonal, that there were emails coming, but it created a lot of confusion in the minds of the devotees or others. And then there are some people who are more attracted towards these kinds of things. So they became more, what's happening, what's going on, tell me more. Instead of doing Krishna Katha, I had to basically explain about other kinds of things. And then I got a sense of how important our role is as being emissaries for Guru Maharaj and Prabhupada. Prabhupada Maharaj once said this, that you may not realize it, but you're always being observed. So always consider the fact that there is somebody watching you. So act in such a way. Whether he was saying, whether you are at work, you don't have to have a Vaishnav tilak or a Vaishnav attire, but even then somebody is watching you. Whether you're at the temple, whether you're out there distributing books or whatever. So we can change ourselves, try and change ourselves, and those that we have influence on. But since to some extent what you're saying, it goes on, it will go on. Srila Prabhupada once said that a movement will last for 10,000 years. But then he also said that the only thing that can destroy a movement is the lack of cooperation amongst the devotees. So I don't think I answered your question, Guru, but I was just sharing my thoughts. I don't even think there is a definitive answer to that.
I was just one thing that I got out of your answer is very powerful. In fact, I have that realization too, that I also came across similar situation in my growing up in Krishna consciousness, the negative and positives. But what kept me in Krishna consciousness is the positive side of it, like those people who have exhibited the positive qualities. So that's very powerful, and I think that requires often reminders in my own mind, saying that how it's important to cultivate that positive qualities in order to um, keep the movement going, keep the things going, not only ourselves but also when we have that positive quality, we can inspire others into the positive quality, who have the who have the similar kind of aptitude, and that way a group of people will be able to attract the others from the negative side of it. So that's certainly wonderful aspect of this answer that I liked. And the second thing is, one thing I was trying to get from you is there anything that we can counsel to the closed ones, those one whom we know very well affected by this and slackening in their Krishna consciousness, having the excuse of seeing other people going in a negative way, and is there any way we can counsel them, other than I'm sure by being a positive a person, by being a good character person, that's certainly a good force, but is there anything to counsel them?
I can share with you something that I was counseled by one of the senior devotees when I was in similar situations. And I think it was basically a two-part recommendation. One was that that you should not get into a position of trying to judge those who you think are not exemplary devotees, because that develops that mentality. This is good devotee, this is bad devotee, etc. Right? So how do you approach them? You approach them as approach the situation as being incompatible. And so there's a difference between the two. That one is that you consider the person as being having bad qualities or offending, etc. So you're condemning them, right? And then you're also taking the role of being offensive to them, so you're not helping your devotional life. But there is obviously something going on, because if you're experientially feeling it, there's something going on. So the recommendation was that you consider the situation of that of incompatibility, that the moods are different. And at this point, I don't understand their moods. So best for me is to distance myself from there, but not go go down the path of judging them and offending them. The specific advice was that if you're not in a position to rectify the situation, then you should distance yourself from the situation. And the second part is that those that you do have influence on, you should actively work. So just like it is important to not interact with those that you do not have influence on, it is also important to interact with those that you do have influence on. Right? So if you can understand what I'm saying, that if you have influence on somebody and you're not rectifying the situation, then you are at fault. So it behooves upon you to take on that role. Don't be passive. So this particular devotee was saying that a lot of time, and he was saying that is one problem, is that people are so scared of Vaishnava Prad that they allow so many things to happen, even though they can rectify it. So the second thing is that how you rectify it depends on the situation, whether it is by speaking to them, counseling them, or guiding them in the different way to rectify it. But equally important to approach those who are getting bewildered by this. I remember in our temple many years ago, a young boy came And he was like exponentially, I remember he came and he was just asking around, who are these deities? I mean, of course, Radha Krishna is Indian, but he didn't know Ganetai. And then within a week, he was doing service at the temple. Within a month, he was doing Mangalarti. And then he stopped coming. After 4 or 5 months, he stopped coming. And then I work in downtown DC. So once I had gone out for a walk and I saw him, right? He also worked in DC. And then the funny thing is that as soon as we were working in a way that we would intersect. When he saw me, he turned around because he didn't want to meet me. Now, I didn't have any interaction with him in the temple, but he knew me because we had seen each other. So I chased him. I said, "Oh, Prabhu, wait." And then he waited. And then, I asked him, "What's going on? I haven't seen you for a while. Is your health okay? Everything's okay?" And then initially, they said, "Oh, everything's okay." So the normal is that I'm too busy with work. Right? That's what they say. I'm too busy with work. I can't come. And then I kept gently asking him, "Yeah, but work is there, but sometimes you can come, etc." And then it turned out is what had happened was, and he was a single guy, that when he started coming to the temple, and very good quality, very obedient, submissive kind of person, everybody gave him service. Somebody said, "Wash the pot." Somebody said, "Clean the temple." Somebody said, "You do this." And he didn't like to say no. So then some devotees were upset at him. They started chastising him. Some devotees started saying that, "No, you only do my service, don't do any other service." So all the pleasure that he was feeling from coming to the temple, that was just sucked out of it. Now, none of the devotees per se, nobody really wanted him to stop coming to the temple. In their mind, it was like how to encourage the person in Krishna consciousness by giving the person service. But there was no way to integrate the approach. So I tried to speak to him, but I didn't have a relationship with him. So he went away. He never came back again. But at least what happened as a result of that we started developing what we called was this mentor system. That when a devotee comes, then there's one person who basically is his go-to person. All the services go through that person, and the mentor also decides that some persons are more inclined to some kind of service, kirtan, or some people like cleaning the temple, some people like book distribution. So then we developed this system, which worked well. That we were able to encourage the devotees to come too. So I guess I was sharing this with you to indicate that maybe if you are able to make a difference, we should take the risk, because one's spiritual life is too precious to let it go away. But the other part is also true. If you cannot make a difference, then there's no advantage in us developing angst and gossiping about it or offending the person. That makes sense, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, sure, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Achyuta, welcome.
Looks like she's still in India, Prabhu.
Oh, wow. Long time, huh? She's been in India since summer of last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll continue with verse 70. Divyavarsh sahasranam sahasranam ahutojasah bhauman bhokshate bhogan vai divyamscha anugrahan mama. The Lord then blessed all the prachetas, saying, "My dear princess, by my mercy you can enjoy all the facilities of this world as well as the heavenly world. Indeed, you can enjoy all of them without hindrance and with full strength for 1 million celestial years. So when Vishwanath Chakravarti comments on this verse, he says that what the Lord is saying is that for thousands of divine years, you will enjoy thousands of divine pleasures. Right? And then he says that the phrase thousands of divine years translates to 3,000 years of the demigods. So Srila Prabhupada translates Sahasranam Sahasram as 1,000, which means million. And because there's two Sahasranam, Vishwanath Chakravarti applies one to the duration and one to the pleasures. That for thousands of divine years, you will have thousands of pleasure. Srila Prabhupada, he considers it to be both of them qualifying time, saying for 1,000 years, which is for 1,000,000 years, the Prachetas will enjoy pleasures. The Prabhupada says that in this way, for 1,000,000 years, according to the calculation of the higher planetary systems, the Prachetas were allowed to enjoy all kinds of material facilities. Although this lifespan was so long, the Prachetas were given full bodily strength by the grace of the Lord. So sometimes people make this distinction between the years in the life and the life in the years. So years in the life is just the duration of the life, and life in the years is how are those years being enjoyed. If you are sick or bedridden, then you may have years, but it's not really life. It's basically suffering, and it's not enjoying life. So the Prachetas are getting both the benedictions, that they will have many years in their life and they will have many lives in their years. Life means life pleasures in their year. And so Prabhupada says that in the material world, if he wants to live for many years, he must endure the difficulty of old age, invalidity, and many other miserable conditions. The Prachetas, however, are given full bodily strength to enjoy material facilities. This special facility was given to the Prachetas so that they could continue rendering full devotional service. So it's interesting that when the Lord is giving the benedictions, he says that bhokshyata bhogan. So bhokshyat means that you will enjoy, and bhogan is the object of enjoyment. So you will enjoy enjoyments, right? So generally, it's used in the context of material enjoyment, right? When you say that the person is doing is involved in extensive bhoga, then basically the person is materially enjoying. But Srila Prabhupada says that in the context of Prachetas, the bhokshata bhogan means that you will have many years to enjoy devotional service. Why is devotional service still called bhogan? Why is it still called bhokshata? Because the nature of devotional service is that it gives you material enjoyment also, right? It's not that it gives you only that you're materially suffering, you only have spiritual enjoyment. It gives you the material enjoyment is subsumed within that spiritual enjoyment. So then there's no difference in understanding this. That the Lord is not saying that you will have material enjoyment and then maybe later on you will do spiritual activities. What the Lord is saying is that for 1,000,000 years you will enjoy. For devotees, enjoyment is devotional life. But that devotional life or devotional service also includes material pleasures. That this way they will get both of them. So Prabhupada concludes later on the purport said that this special facility was given to the Prachetas so that they could continue rendering full devotional service. This will be explained in the following verse. Athamai anapayenya bhaktipakva gunashayaha upyasyata madhama nirvidya niryadataha. Therefore, you will develop unadulterated devotional service unto me and be freed from all material contamination. At that time, being completely unattached to material enjoyment in the so-called heavenly planets, as well as in hellish planets, you will return home back to Godhead. So this is the real benediction that the Lord is giving, that they will become freed of all material attachments, they will develop pure devotional service, and they will ultimately return to the spiritual world. So they're all the same benediction, even though they are three, but they're all the same. That being free from material attachments, developing pure devotional service, and ultimately returning to the spiritual world. Because they're coming from the Lord, in the context, they're all the same. So the Lord is assuring the Prachetas over here, because they may worry that the Lord is giving them a benediction that might cause them to fall. And so he's saying you will live for 1,000,000 years. And in 1,000,000 years, you will have full facility to enjoy all pleasures. So they may say that for 10,000 years, we have lived in a secure environment, right? So they were living in the like we see that in practical life also, that when the devotees are in the ashram, whether it's the Gurukul or the ashram, they're protected. They have a sanctified environment which is controlled, and they're all going to Mangalarti, learning verses, and doing all kinds of wonderful activities. Then they leave the Gurukul. And for many of them, things change. There was this study actually done, not by ISKCON, but by an academic person who was, I guess, a researcher in religious organizations. And he was noting that more than 3/4 of the graduates from the different Gurukuls in ISKCON, they do not follow the practice anymore. In fact, he said the only one practice that they already, and that was a pretty high percentage, almost like 95%, is that they remain vegetarian. But other than that, they do give up a lot of their practices, because they go from a microcosm that is relatively sterile, conducive, and then they're transplanted from there into another environment where essentially it is unregulated. So the Prachetas, they have the same concern. Therefore, 10,000 years, we've been in this environment that the only people in the environment were the 10 of us. And the only thing that we had was following the instructions of Lord Shiva and our father. Now you're saying for 1,000,000 years we will live and enjoy in the heavenly planets and the heavenly pleasures. So it's a recipe of disaster. So the Lord is assuring them. He's saying that even though you will be in that situation, you will be completely unattached to material enjoyment in the so-called heavenly planets as well as in the hellish planets. So then the question arises that why then the Lord is offering them this benediction? If they are not going to enjoy it, then why even offer it to them? So, not explicitly stated, but the general understanding is that this is to fulfill the purpose of the Lord. So, one understanding is that the Lord, through his devotees, he fulfills many purposes. So, for example, in the case of the Pandavas, the Lord, through the Pandavas, he demonstrated many things. He put them into trouble to show how devotees act in trouble. He showed how they were valorous. He showed how simply by following the path of dharma, they were glorious. So many things the Lord did. So that's one reason. The Lord is saying that you stay for 1,000,000 years. And for that 1,000,000 years, you will inspire so many people by example, so that they can take to devotional life and come back to God. That's one understanding. Second understanding is that if you notice in the verse, the Lord is saying, in the future you will develop unadulterated devotional service to me. In the future, you will be freed of all material contamination. And then at that time, you will become completely unattached. Which means that there are still traces of material attachments in the prachetas. Like we have that example of Narad Muni, that even though Narad Muni was pure enough to get darshan of the Lord, but the Lord says that, yes, but I'm only doing this to encourage you. You're still contaminated by the mode of goodness. So similar situation in the prachetas, that they were very much attached to the mode of goodness. They led a very, very pristine sattvic life. But the mode of goodness is also material mode. It is also something that contaminates. So what the Lord is saying is that you will have this time to expunge all these desires from you. That if you have desire for sex, you will get a wife. And then you can unite with her and have a son. If you have desire for dominion, you will get a kingdom and you can rule it. If you desire to satisfy your senses, then you will have the vitality to satisfy the senses. But what he is also promising is that they will be expunged. Now, generally, it is not recommended that you expunge your desires by indulging in them, but it is also recommended, but what is recommended is that by engaging in those desires under regulation, one is able to expunge them. So the Grihastha ashram, when under regulation, one enjoys wealth, one enjoys conjugal life, one enjoys fame, but because there is regulation, the understanding is that those desires get expunged as opposed to be suppressed. So by nature, desires are like fire. And the more that you try to satisfy them, the stronger they burn. But when they are being engaged under regulations, then they also nourish the mood of detachment. And that's what the Lord is doing in this case, saying that under my protection, right? Under my protection, and because of your good qualities, when you will spend all this long 1 million years, then the desires that you may have will all become eliminated. And then you will develop unadulterated devotional service. Then you will come back to me. Right? So we see that in the case of we see that in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj, Pandavas, where the Lord encourages them to engage in material pursuit for either one of these two reasons or both reasons. One is being a representative of the Lord and inspiring others. And the second is, while being a representative of the Lord, becoming purified also. So Vishnu Chakravarti notes that since the Prachetas have received the mercy of the Lord, it should be understood that they have already become freed of any material gunas. So he says, thus the sentence cannot mean, after having burned your material gunas in the heart by bhakti, you will return to me. Rather, the Lord says that being disgusted with places having material identity like Brahmaloka, which are equivalent to hell, you will attain my abode. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is presenting the first scenario. He's saying that since the Lord is present in front of the Prachetas, he's glorifying them. The second situation cannot be true. That the Prachetas cannot have any desires that are material. So when the Lord is promising all that, he's saying that in future you will become free of this, etc. What he's saying is that you will be freed of any attraction to this places, right? So saying being disgusted with places like Brahmaloka, which have material gunas, which are like hell to devotees, you will attain my abode. So Srila Prabhupada says that that a devotee is always situated on the Brahman platform. He has nothing to do with material happiness or distress. When one is strongly fixed in devotional service and free of all material attachments and contaminated by the material modes of nature, he becomes fit to return home, back to Godhead. Although by special blessing the Prachetas would enjoy material facilities for millions of years, they would not be attached to them. Thus, in the end of the material enjoyment, they would be promoted to the spiritual world and return to Godhead. Right? So Prabhupada is essentially giving the same understanding that Vishnu Chakravarti has given. And then later on he says the word Pakva Gunashya has special significance, for it means that by devotional service one is able to give up the influences of the three modes of material nature. As long as one is influenced by the modes of material nature, he cannot return to Godhead. So here Prabhupada is taking the other interpretation of the verse, that the Prachetas may have some material qualities, but Pakva Gunashaya, that they will give it up by the influence of the modes. So we see this in verses where multiple meanings come up, and each one of them has a certain lesson for us. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. I will not do the next verse because it's a long verse. And I'll pause and see if there is any concluding thoughts or discussions.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Kadamba Muni also was placed in similar situation. No? He was asked to get married by Lord Vishnu himself, and then also he enjoyed for so many years. He manifested his own planet, flying planet, and all that. No, is it similar?
Are you talking about Kardama Muni?
Yes.
Kardama, yes, yes. So these personalities like Dhruva Maharaj, Kardama, Prahlad, similar situation. That Lord gave them the benediction. Kardama Muni, right? Even before he married, the Lord said, "You'll ultimately come back to me." He said, "I will come as your son." Right? He gave all the benediction. But then we also see that he goes through all that process of material, so-called material enjoyment. And one can understand it again from these two perspectives, that it was regulated enjoyment to purify him, or it was simply the Lord using him for a purpose. That he was always, right when he got the darshan of the Lord, at that time he was a pure devotee. But he still continued to do apparently materialistic activities as a service to the Lord.
Yeah, and then also, Prabhu, if somebody is the urgency of let's say getting some material comfort, if somebody had to work very hard to get it, then he won't have the time most probably to concentrate in his spiritual life. But if he's put in a family that is already in a comfortable situation, then he does not have to work. He won't like go and fight to get a piece of bread to eat. It's already there. And then he can concentrate more his energy to go towards spirituality and to serve. I think the situation, as Krishna said, no, for those that have done pious activities, or even great sages that fall down from the heavenly planet, they are put in a family that is already, a devotee family, so that they can continue their service.
Absolutely right, Prabhu. That the benediction of Krishna for practicing devotees is that he makes arrangements for them to continue. Like in this case, assuming that these personalities like Kardama Muni, they had some material desires. Then Krishna makes arrangements for them to engage in those material desires, but in such a way that it also does not become a big obstacle for their devotional service. And ultimately, it's free will, but it is Krishna makes that arrangement there. So we see in the life of devotees that devotees take birth, and Krishna gives enough opulence that does not become a big hindrance to devotional life. He does not give too much opulence because that might become an obstacle also, but he just gives enough.
Just enough.
Just enough, yeah. And that just enough is probably different for different devotees, right? Prabhupada, especially towards the later years of his life, he was worth several millions of dollars. But it did not make any difference to him. Everything came and everything went. It made no difference. But I forget the number. I was reading somewhere that during the mid-70s, ISKCON was distributing $20 million or something like that every year. The revenue is about $20 million. $20 million at that time is like almost $1 million. Now it's a lot of money.
Yes.
And didn't make any effect on Prabhupada.
Yeah, he said that where all his, like in a corporation, like, the worker, you have to pay them, but his people was all volunteers.
Right. They were giving their lives, not just the 9 to 5 time, right? They gave their entire lives. Yeah. Okay, so any other thoughts? A little over time. Okay. If not, we'll end over here. Vanchikalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti vaishnavim ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanand.
Good to see you back, Prabhu. Thank you for your class.
Yeah, good to hear from you. So you're back in the US, huh?
Yeah, Prabhu. I'm back. Yeah.
So where are you, in California?
California. Yeah.
Okay. I'm guessing you're at work.
Yeah, Prabhu.
Okay. Okay. Nice to hear from you. Hare Krishna.